The intake coordinator at the Galactic Military Academy had seen many things during her 15 cycles of service. She had processed warrior castes from the Thorian Empire, watched battle-hardened Krill veterans stride through orientation without a flicker of concern, and once witnessed a Valkor war chief punch through a steel door because the paperwork took too long. None of that prepared her for the human sitting across from her desk. The woman wore a simple gray jumpsuit with no insignia, no medals, no visible weapons. Her dark hair was pulled back in a functional ponnet style. Her eyes, an unusual shade of amber, regarded Coordinator Velna with the kind of patient amusement usually reserved for watching small children attempt complex tasks. "So," Velna said, adjusting her datapad with 3 of her 4 hands, while the 4th nervously tapped her desk. "Lieutenant Kara Mills, you've been accepted into the Advanced Combat Tactics program. The Academy requires all new students to select training partners from compatible species for the integration exercises." "No." The human's response was immediate and flat. Velna's throat sac inflated slightly, a Pexian gesture of confusion. "I'm sorry. There must be a translation error. You can't refuse the integration requirement. It's mandatory for all students regardless of rank or background. The Academy believes that learning alongside other species creates better tactical officers and promotes unity across the coalition forces." "I understood perfectly," Kara said, leaning back in the chair that was slightly too small for her frame. "I'm not refusing the requirement. I'm refusing to train with anyone else." "That's the same thing." "Not really." Velna set down her datapad and folded all 4 hands together in what she hoped looked like a professional gesture. It mostly looked like she was trying to stop them from shaking. Humans made her nervous. Everyone claimed they were friendly, diplomatic, eager to integrate into galactic society. But the rumors from the frontier conflicts told a different story. The battles where human units had been present ended with casualty rates that made military statisticians file formal complaints, insisting the data must be corrupted. "Lieutenant Mills, perhaps you don't understand how the Academy works. These integration exercises are carefully designed. We pair students with complementary abilities. Your file indicates exceptional hand-to-hand combat skills, tactical flexibility, and survival expertise. Several students would benefit from training alongside you, and you would gain experience working with Krill strength enhancement, Thorian defensive matrices, or Valkor aggression channeling techniques." Kara smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Yeah, that's the problem." "What problem?" "These species represent the finest warriors in the known galaxy." "Right, and I'd cripple them in the first week." Velna's translator must have malfunctioned because, for a moment, she thought the human had just claimed she would injure some of the deadliest beings in the galaxy during standard training exercises. She tapped the device on her collar twice. "Please repeat that." "You asked why I won't train with partners." Kara counted off on her fingers. "First week, standard endurance drills. Most species tap out around hour 3. Humans? We're just getting warmed up. We'll keep going, because stopping feels worse than continuing. Your Krill partner collapses from exhaustion, you feel guilty. Second week, environmental adaptation. We cycle through temperature extremes, atmospheric changes, pressure variations. Humans survived ice ages, deserts, mountains, swamps, oceans, and Arctic tundra on our homeworld. We don't just adapt, we thrive. Your Thorian friend gets frostbite in the cold chamber while you're complaining it's not cold enough. Third week, combat drills with live rounds. The Academy uses training munitions, Velna interrupted. Do you? Kara's smile widened. Because we don't. Human military doctrine says you train how you fight. Pain teaches faster than theory. You know what happens when someone trains with practice rounds for months and then suddenly faces real ammunition, they freeze. They hesitate. They die. So we train with rounds that hurt. A lot. Your Valcor partner takes a hit meant to teach spacing and reflexes and ends up in medical for 3 days because their pain tolerance is normal. Ours isn't. Velna felt her throat sac deflating. The academy wouldn't allow such dangerous training protocols. Then I train alone. Kara stood up, somehow making the movement look both casual and vaguely threatening. Look, I'm not trying to be difficult. I requested solo training status in my application. Someone approved it, or I wouldn't be here. Check your records again. Grumbling in her native tongue, Velna pulled up the application files. She scrolled through pages of assessments, recommendations, combat records, medical data that made her dizzy just glancing at it. Then she found the approval stamp. Commander Thex, the Academy's Director of Special Operations Training. The note attached was brief. Grant all requests. Do not interfere with human training methodology. Observation only. Report unusual findings directly to my office. This is highly irregular, Velna muttered. Welcome to working with humans, Kara said cheerfully. We're pretty good at irregular. The first week proved Kara's point more effectively than any argument could have. The Advanced Combat Tactics program started with a simple baseline assessment. All new students, regardless of background, participated in a standard endurance evaluation. 30 kilometers, full combat gear, varied terrain. The Academy record stood at 4 hours and 12 minutes, held by a Valcor warrior who'd literally died 3 days later from the exertion. The medics had revived him, but the record stood as a grim reminder that pushing too hard had consequences. 40 students started the run at dawn. The Krill contingent, massive beings of muscle and chitin, took an early lead. The Thorians maintained a steady pace in their environmental suits. The Valcor warriors ran in a pack, their predatory instincts making them unwilling to fall behind. Several smaller species clustered together, knowing cooperation was their only chance to finish. Kara started at the back and stayed there for the first hour. She didn't push, didn't rush, just maintained a pace that looked almost lazy compared to the aggressive sprinting happening at the front of the pack. By hour 2, the Krill started slowing. Their species wasn't built for endurance, despite their strength. Explosive power, devastating in short bursts, but marathons were torture. Hour 3. The Valcor pack thinned as individuals began falling back, their breathing ragged and harsh. The Thorians adjusted their suit settings, compensating for rising body temperatures and fatigue toxin buildup. The smaller species had mostly dropped out, walking the remaining distance with no shame. Finishing was achievement enough. Hour 4. Kara passed the first Valcor, then another. She wasn't sprinting. She hadn't changed pace at all. The same steady rhythm she'd maintained since the start. Her breathing was controlled. Her form was perfect. She looked like she could run for another 30 kilometers without breaking a sweat. The Valcor warrior she passed stared at her with something between awe and horror as she disappeared around a bend in the trail. Hour 4 and 40 minutes. Kara crossed the finish line. She wasn't first. A Thorian named Krell had finished 6 minutes earlier, though his environmental suit was screaming warnings about dangerous core temperature levels, and his medical monitors were already summoning help. She wasn't last either. 3 Valcor warriors and 1 determined Krill student finished after her over the next 20 minutes. What disturbed the Academy instructors wasn't that Kara had finished. It was that she didn't stop. She crossed the finish line, acknowledged the timekeeper with a nod, grabbed a water container, and kept running. When Master Sergeant Hux, a grizzled Thorian who'd been teaching at the Academy for 20 cycles, demanded to know what she was doing, Kara called back over her shoulder. "Cool down. You stop too fast after a long run, you cramp up. I'll do another 5 kilometers easy, then stretch properly. Hux watched her go, then turned to his assistant. Get me that human's medical file, all of it. I need to understand what we're dealing with. The second week introduced environmental adaptation chambers, sophisticated rooms that could simulate conditions from hundreds of different worlds. The training philosophy was simple. Discomfort breeds adaptability. Students would spend 6 hours in each environment, performing standard combat drills while their bodies struggled with unfamiliar conditions. The Krill excelled in high-pressure atmospheres. The Thorians dominated desert simulations. The Valkor owned the jungle scenarios. Every species had environments where they thrived, and others where they merely survived. Kara entered the Arctic simulation alone. The temperature was set to -60 degrees standard. The atmosphere was thin. Visibility was limited by perpetual storms. Most students requested environmental suits for this scenario. She wore standard fatigues and boots. No gloves, no hat, no thermal underlayers. Commander Thex watched from the observation booth as Kara performed the drill sequence. Combat rolls, sprints, weapon handling with metal that was cold enough to freeze flesh on contact. Tactical exercises that required lying prone in snow for extended periods. She didn't shiver, didn't slow down, didn't show any sign that the environment was affecting her at all. After 3 hours, Thex increased the difficulty. Colder temperatures, worse storms. The simulation was now pulling data from a frozen moon that was considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. Kara adapted her tactics to account for reduced visibility. She moved differently in the deeper snow. When ice formed on her weapon, she cleared it and continued. At hour 6, the drill ended. She exited the chamber and immediately headed for the cafeteria, complaining loudly that the cold always made her hungry. The medic who examined her afterwards filed a report that was flagged for immediate review. The human's core body temperature had dropped exactly 2 degrees. Her circulation had automatically restricted blood flow to her extremities to protect vital organs. Her metabolic rate had increased to generate more heat. Her body had adapted to a lethal environment like it was a minor inconvenience, using biological mechanisms that the medic had to look up in xenobiology textbooks to understand. They evolved this? The medic asked Thex later. These responses are automatic? Apparently, their homeworld tried very hard to kill them for several million years, Thex replied. Their bodies learned to cope. That's horrifying. Yes, but also useful. The third week brought combat drills, and that's when things got weird. The Academy's approach to combat training was progressive. Start with low-intensity scenarios. Build up muscle memory. Gradually increase difficulty and danger as students developed skills. By the time live ammunition entered the equation, students had months of preparation. Pain compliance tools were available but rarely used. The goal was to teach, not torture. Kara submitted a training plan that made the combat instructors question whether she understood the concept of progressive development. Day 1. Live fire exercises with full-power weapons. Day 2. Close quarters combat with real blades. Day 3. Combined arms tactics with explosive ordnance. Day 4. Scenario simulation with multiple hostile combatants and no backup. Day 5. Survival exercise, with active pursuit by hunter drones programmed to use lethal force. Senior Instructor Vax, a Valkor warrior with more scars than scales, called her into his office. Lieutenant Mills, I've reviewed your training proposal. I'm concerned you don't understand the purpose of training. We're trying to develop skills, not create casualties. I understand perfectly, Kara said. That's why I submitted the plan. You want to be shot at with live rounds on day 1? Yes. You want to practice knife fighting with real weapons? Yes. You want explosives involved in tactical exercises. Are we seeing a pattern here? Kara asked. Look, Instructor Vax, I respect the Academy's methodology. It works great for most species. But humans learn differently when it comes to combat. We need real stakes to trigger the right responses. Training weapons don't make us flinch. Practice scenarios don't spike our adrenaline the right way. We need to feel actual danger, or our bodies don't engage the systems that keep us alive in real fights. Vax's tail twitched in agitation. What systems? The good ones. Perception acceleration, pain suppression, strength enhancement, fine motor control under stress. Humans have all these emergency protocols built into our biology, but they only activate when we're genuinely threatened. You can't train for real combat using fake danger. The body knows the difference. That sounds like a recipe for dead students. Kara shrugged. We've been training this way for thousands of years. Our casualties are lower than most species during actual combat deployments. The Academy wanted to know why humans train alone. This is why. Because our training methods look suicidal to everyone else, but they work for us. We push harder. We accept more pain. We put ourselves in real danger during preparation, so we're ready when danger finds us for real. You can observe. You can study us. You can file reports about how reckless we are, but you can't train with us, not safely. Vax stared at her for a long moment. Then he approved the training plan with one addition: full medical teams on standby for every session, and remote termination switches for all weapon systems in case intervention became necessary. Kara agreed to the terms with good humor, though she privately doubted the medical teams would have time to react if something went wrong. Human combat happened fast. The live fire exercise took place in a building-clearing simulation. The structure was a maze of rooms, corridors, and obstacles. Automated weapon systems were placed throughout, programmed to fire on any movement. The rounds were real. The danger was real. Standard protocol was to send in a full team with suppression support and careful advancement. Kara went in alone with a sidearm and 40 rounds. She cleared the building in 8 minutes. 3 weapon systems tracked her movement and fired. She was hit twice, once in the shoulder and once in the thigh. The rounds were designed to wound rather than kill, but they still tore through flesh and muscle. She didn't stop moving, didn't call for medical support. She returned fire, destroyed the automated systems, completed the objective, and exited the building before requesting treatment. The medics rushed to her as she sat down heavily on a bench outside the simulation zone. Blood was soaking through her fatigues in 2 places. She was pale, breathing carefully, but also grinning like she'd just won a prize. "That was great," she said as the medics began working. "I haven't had a good drill like that in months. The timing on those turrets was clever. Almost got me in the doorway breach." "You've been shot twice," the medic said, his voice high and strained. "You need immediate surgery." "Nah, they're through and through wounds. Clean entries and exits. Patch me up, pump me full of antibiotics. I'll be fine in a few days. Humans heal fast. You'll see." Instructor Vax watched from a distance, his combat instincts screaming that nothing about this was normal or acceptable. The human had been shot. Twice. She was still conscious, still talking, still acting like this was a routine training day. He'd seen Valkor warriors go into shock from smaller wounds. The pain alone should have been incapacitating. But Kara just sat there, joking with the medics, while they sealed the wounds and prepared transport to the medical facility. Commander Thex appeared beside Vax, watching the scene with the same disturbed fascination. "This is what they do," he said quietly. "This is how they train. Every report from human military facilities mentions this. They wound each other during practice. They push until something breaks. And then they heal and do it again. The first time I read about it, I thought it was propaganda. Exaggeration to make them seem more formidable? But it's real. They really do this. Why? Vax asked. Because they can, Thex replied. Their biology allows it. Their culture encourages it. Their results justify it. Humans have been fighting since before they left their homeworld. They've refined warfare into something approaching art, and pain is their teacher. Watch and learn, instructor. The Academy approved her presence here to study human methodology. This is what we paid for. This is madness. Yes, but effective madness. The kind that wins wars. By week 4, the other students had started avoiding the human training sections entirely. Not out of dislike or fear exactly, but more a kind of primal self-preservation instinct that kicked in whenever they saw Kara heading toward the combat zones. The Krill student named Torvik described it best during a late-night conversation in the barracks common area. "It's like watching someone play with fire for fun," he said, his translator rendering his chittering speech into standard galactic. "You know fire burns. You respect it. You use it carefully. But then, this human just reaches into the flames, pulls out a hot coal, and starts juggling. And she's smiling the whole time. Your brain just says no thank you. I'll be over here where physics makes sense." The survival exercise in week 5 became legendary, though not for reasons the Academy anticipated. The scenario was straightforward. Students were dropped in a hostile wilderness environment with minimal gear and hunted by autonomous drones programmed with advanced combat algorithms. The goal was to evade capture for 72 hours. Most students managed 20 to 30 hours before the drones tagged them. The record was 58 hours, set by a Thorian scout with exceptional camouflage abilities. Kara lasted 16 hours before the drones found her. Then things got interesting. The observation team monitoring the exercise watched in growing confusion as their drone telemetry started showing errors. Drone 7 went offline. Then Drone 3. Drone 12 reported catastrophic damage before its feed cut out. Within 4 hours of first contact, half the drone fleet was destroyed or disabled. The human wasn't hiding anymore. She was hunting. Instructor Vax pulled up the recovered footage from Drone 7's final moments. The machine had tracked Kara to a rocky outcropping and moved in for the tag. Standard procedure. The human had no weapons capable of damaging military-grade hardware, except she'd spent 3 hours building a deadfall trap using logs, rocks, and vine cables. The drone flew into the kill zone and got crushed under half a ton of stone. Drone 3 had been disabled by a precisely thrown rock that shattered its optical sensors. Drone 12 had its rotor assembly tangled in a net woven from plant fibers and weighted with more rocks. "She's using Stone Age technology," Vax said, his voice somewhere between amazement and disbelief. "Against military drones. And winning." By hour 60, all 15 drones were offline. Kara emerged from the wilderness right on schedule at the 72-hour mark, carrying a backpack full of salvaged drone components and looking extremely pleased with herself. "Good exercise," she told Commander Thex during the debrief. "Your drones have a vulnerability in the sensor pod attachment. Too much lateral force and the housing cracks. Also, the pursuit algorithms are predictable once you understand the pattern. They prioritize direct approach over tactical positioning. I'd recommend an update that introduces random variation in the attack vectors." Thex stared at the salvaged components spread across his desk. "You were supposed to evade them." "I did, for 16 hours. Then I got bored." "So you destroyed 15 military drones with rocks and sticks." "And vines. The vines were crucial for the entanglement traps. Look, Commander, you dropped me in a forest full of resources and expected me to just hide? Humans don't do that. We assess threats, we adapt, we overcome. Your drones became the training exercise instead of the hunters. I learned a lot about their capabilities. Your engineering team will want to review my notes on the sensor vulnerabilities. She slid a datapad across the desk. Thex picked it up and scrolled through pages of detailed technical analysis, tactical observations, and recommendations for drone improvements. The human had turned a survival exercise into a comprehensive equipment evaluation and written a report that would have taken the Academy's testing division months to compile. "You're terrifying," Thex said finally. "Thank you," Kara replied, completely sincere. "We work hard at it." Week 7 brought the integration challenge that Academy officials had been planning since Kara's arrival. If she wouldn't train with partners voluntarily, they'd create a scenario that required cooperation, a combat simulation too complex for one person to handle alone. Multiple objectives, coordinated timing, overlapping fields of fire, and defensive positions that needed simultaneous assault from 3 directions. The students would be divided into teams of 4. Success required communication, trust, and tactical synchronization. Kara walked into the briefing room and found 3 other students waiting: Torvik the Krill, Silesh the Thorian scout, and a Valkor warrior named Jek. They looked uncomfortable. She couldn't blame them. "Let me guess," Kara said. "You 3 volunteered for this?" "We were voluntold," Jek growled. "Instructor Vax said it was time we learned what humans are capable of. I think he's punishing us for something." "Probably," Kara agreed. She studied the mission brief on the display screen. "Okay, this is actually pretty clever. 3 hardened bunkers arranged in a triangle formation, interlocking fire zones. If we hit one, the others can provide covering fire that'll shred us. We need to strike all 3 simultaneously within a 30-second window, or the whole thing falls apart. The Academy designed this to be impossible for one person. They want us to work together." "Can we?" Silesh asked quietly. "Work together, I mean. Your training methods are very different from ours." Kara considered the question seriously. "Yeah, we can. Because this isn't training. It's a mission. Missions have different rules. When I'm training, I push myself to the breaking point because that's how I improve. But when I'm working with a team, my job is to complete the objective and keep everyone alive. Those are compatible goals. You 3 have skills, I don't. Torvik, you're strong enough to breach those bunker doors if we can get you close. Silesh, your camouflage can get you into position without being detected. Jek, your aggression and speed make you perfect for the assault phase. I'm good at planning and adapting when things go wrong, which they will." "They always do," Jek said, his scarred face creasing in what might have been a smile. They spent 2 hours planning. Kara asked questions, listened to ideas, and built a strategy that used each team member's strengths. She didn't demand control, didn't insist on human methodology. She treated her teammates like the competent warriors they were and built a plan that reflected their capabilities. When they entered the simulation, they moved like a unit that had trained together for months instead of hours. Silesh disappeared into the terrain, his adaptive camouflage making him nearly invisible as he approached the northern bunker. Torvik circled wide to the east, using his bulk and natural armor to absorb fire from automated defenses. Jek and Kara took the southern approach, moving fast and low through cover. The timing had to be perfect. Kara's internal chronometer counted down. 30 seconds. She could see Jek tensing beside her, ready to sprint. 20 seconds. Somewhere to the north, Silesh would be placing breaching charges on the bunker access panel. 10 seconds. Torvik was in position, his massive arms ready to tear through reinforced doors. 5 seconds. Kara took a breath, felt her heart rate slow despite the imminent action. and smiled. Go. 3 bunkers exploded into chaos simultaneously. Silesh's charges blew the northern door off its frame. Torvik ripped through the eastern entrance like it was made of paper. Kara and Jek breached the southern position with synchronized precision, Jek's speed carrying him through the gap, while Kara provided covering fire. The simulation's defensive systems tried to respond, but they'd been programmed to handle sequential attacks, not coordinated simultaneous assault. The interlocking fire zones became useless when all 3 positions fell at once. Mission complete. Time: 4 minutes and 18 seconds. New Academy record for the scenario by almost 3 minutes. The team regrouped at the extraction point, breathing hard but victorious. Torvik's chitin armor was scorched from weapons fire. Silesh had taken a glancing hit that his suit had mostly absorbed. Jek was bleeding from a shallow cut on his arm. Kara had bruised ribs from a close explosion. Nobody cared. They'd done the impossible. That was incredible, Torvik said, his translator barely keeping up with his excited chittering. I've never moved that fast or felt that coordinated with a team before. How did you know the timing would work? I didn't, Kara admitted. I believed it would work because you 3 are good at what you do. Trust makes the difference. You trusted me to build a solid plan. I trusted you to execute your parts perfectly. And look what happened. Instructor Vax was waiting outside the simulation zone with Commander Thex. Both looked impressed, which was apparently unusual enough that the other students gathering to watch noticed immediately. Lieutenant Mills, Vax said formally. That was exceptional teamwork. Perhaps the Academy was wrong about humans being unable to train with partners. No, you were right, Kara said. I can work with a team on missions, but I still train alone. There's a difference. Missions are about the objective and the team. Training is about breaking yourself down and rebuilding stronger. I won't inflict that process on others. But when it's time to fight for real, yeah, I'll stand beside anyone brave enough to stand beside me. Commander Thex stepped forward, his environmental suit hissing softly. The Academy has observed your training for 7 weeks now, Lieutenant Mills. We've documented methods that frankly disturb most of our staff. We've watched you get shot, frozen, hunted, and exhausted. We've seen you turn survival exercises into combat operations and solo scenarios into equipment evaluations. And today, we watched you lead a team to break a scenario record that stood for 12 cycles. I have one question. Sir, why do humans train so hard? What are you preparing for that requires this level of intensity? Kara was quiet for a moment, her amber eyes distant. When she spoke, her voice was soft, but carried clearly in the sudden silence. Commander, humans spent hundreds of thousands of years as prey animals on our homeworld. We were hunted by things bigger, faster, and stronger than us. We survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more stubborn than anything trying to kill us. Then we became predators ourselves and realized the galaxy is full of things that want to hurt us. So we train like the universe is actively hostile, because our experience says it is. We push until we break, because breaking in training means we learn our limits before those limits get us killed in combat. We embrace pain, because pain teaches lessons that theory can't. And we do it alone, because we refuse to let our preparation methods hurt the people we'll eventually fight beside. Does that answer your question? Thex nodded slowly. It does. And it explains why human units have such impressive combat records despite being a relatively new species in the Coalition. You're not preparing for the fights you expect. You're preparing for the worst possible scenarios. Every time, Kara agreed, because hope is great, but preparation keeps you alive. The final week of the program was traditionally a celebration. Students who'd survived the Advanced Combat Tactics curriculum were honored at a ceremony, received their certifications, and usually spent several days recovering before their next assignments. Kara skipped most of the celebration to run one final training session. Solo, naturally. Torvik found her in the long-range combat simulation, engaging target drones at distances that were supposed to be impossible for unassisted shooters. She was hitting them anyway, through a combination of mathematical precision, environmental awareness, and what looked like sheer stubbornness. "You know the program is over, right?" he called out. "You're allowed to relax." Kara fired 3 more times, dropped 3 more drones, and safed her weapon before turning. Relaxation is what you do when there's no work left. There's always work left. Besides, I wanted to test something. The Academy's training pushed me in interesting ways. I think I'm better than I was 7 weeks ago. That's worth celebrating more than any ceremony. "You're strange," Torvik said, but he was smiling. "Most species would be exhausted and ready to rest. You're looking for new challenges. Humans get bored easily. We need stimulation, or we start making bad decisions. Better to channel that energy into improvement than let it turn destructive." They walked together toward the barracks, the Academy's twin moons rising in the purple sky. Around them, other students celebrated, shared stories, made plans for future service. The Advanced Combat Tactics program had brought together warriors from dozens of species, taught them to respect each other's abilities, and forged bonds that would last careers. It had also revealed something the galaxy was still processing. Humans were unlike anything else out there. "So," Torvik said eventually, "the Academy asked why humans train alone. You gave them an answer. Do you think they understand now?" Kara shrugged. "Understanding and accepting are different things. They understand the reasons intellectually. But I don't think most species will ever truly accept that our methods work for us. They see the pain, the danger, the intensity, and their instincts say this is wrong. And for them, it would be. But we're not them. We're humans. We survived ice ages and plagues and predators and wars and our own worst impulses. We made it off our homeworld and into the galaxy by refusing to quit when things got hard. That's not going to change just because we joined a galactic coalition. We'll always train like we're fighting for survival, because somewhere deep in our DNA, we remember when we were." "That's actually kind of sad," Torvik said. "Maybe," Kara admitted, "or maybe it's the reason we're here at all. Evolution doesn't care about fair. It cares about results. Humans got results. Now we're teaching the galaxy what that looks like." Back in his office, Commander Thex compiled his final report on the Human Training Observation Program. The document was comprehensive, detailed, and would probably give nightmares to several members of the Academy's Ethics Board. But it was also honest. Humans trained differently because they were different. Their methods reflected their biology, their history, and their approach to survival. The Coalition could learn from them, but expecting other species to adopt human training protocols would be dangerous and counterproductive. His final recommendation was simple: establish separate training facilities for humans willing to share their methodology with observers, but never require integration with standard Coalition training programs. Let humans train like humans. Let other species learn by watching, not by participating. And most importantly, be very grateful that humans were on the Coalition's side, because any species that trained this hard was not something you wanted as an enemy. Vax read the report over Thex's shoulder and grunted approval. "The person reading this is going to think you're exaggerating." "Let them," Thex said, "until they meet a human. Then they'll understand why I used the word terrifying 16 times in a military training assessment. Because it's accurate." 3 months later, Lieutenant Kara Mills received her next assignment, instructor position at the newly established Human Combat Methodology Research Center. Her job would be training observers from allied species, demonstrating techniques, and helping the coalition understand what made human warriors so effective. She accepted with enthusiasm and one condition: she still got to train alone. The Academy agreed immediately. They'd learned their lesson. When a human said training with them wasn't safe, you didn't argue. You just made sure the medical teams were ready and the insurance was paid up. Because humans didn't train to pass courses or earn certifications. They trained like their lives depended on it, because their entire species' history had taught them that preparation was the difference between extinction and survival. And when someone asked why humans train alone, the answer was always the same: because no one else survives training with us. Not because we're cruel or reckless, but because we push to limits that would break anyone who hadn't evolved to endure them. We train in fire so we don't burn in battle. We embrace pain so it doesn't paralyze us when stakes are real. We break ourselves down and rebuild stronger because that's what humans do. That's what we've always done. That's what made us survivors. And survivors don't apologize for the methods that kept them alive.